Hi, everybody. Welcome back to a effervescent version of ASIS TV with your host, Chuck Carroll of Security Guy Radio and SecurityGuyTV.com. My next guest, Ms. Brittany Golly. We're going to talk about, get ready, multi-generational strategic leadership guidance or how to get noticed at work. Welcome to the show, Brittany.
Thanks so much, Chuck.
Now, that was a mouthful. Tell us old-timers what this means.
Maria Dominguez and I came up with this. We spoke at the conference, ASIS conference last year, and it was kind of a big hit and a great topic for the people that were interested in not only how to get noticed at work in the boardroom, but also how to work with the different generations inside of, whether it be, day-to-day business or even at an executive level, as a lot of these millennials are working their way up through the chains and up the chain and the hierarchy inside of some of these big corporations. Is how do we work with them and how do we get noticed, or how do we even stay noticed in this ever-changing world that we're in? So that's kind of the gist of it.
How did this work in the old days? I mean, I'm trying to think about how I got noticed. Is I did a good job and I got noticed. Maybe that was a virtue back then. What is the difference? What is the struggle now to get noticed? Why is it different?
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of data, you have a lot of media, you have a lot of, IQ. There's this new thing called EQ, which is emotional intelligence, which is really getting rated a lot higher than even your skill set in, whether you're typing 70 words a minute or not anymore. That's not necessarily relevant. But there's a term nowadays where, millennials, as an example, are inundated with data but starving for wisdom. And exactly the opposite's happening with the baby boomers. Is they feel like they're not up to date. They're not data informed because they can't get the data that all these other people or generations have easy access to just because of their technical skill sets. But they have all this wisdom, and they're like, they're frustrated just as much as millennials are in the opposite direction. But then there's also, the Gen X's and, this up and coming generation who, has Instagram at 11 years old, and cell phones and everything else. It's going to be a completely different roadmap to getting to an executive level respect factor, as well as a leadership position inside of, an executive team, or building your own place inside of a boardroom. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but really the difference is just becoming a leader that has, is turning vision into reality. How are you turning either your team's vision, your company's vision, or even your own personal branding vision into an actual reality? And then what is the execution behind that? So, like I said, there's so many companies that are now evaluating personal traits that grow you a following of people, rather than, some of these other technical things that we used to, really, hire from, maybe 10, 20 years ago.
Are we finding that people with, let's say, light-colored hair that I have, are they less able to make decisions because they don't understand the technical part of everything? Absolutely
not. I think that's not factual at all. I think that where the struggle remains, and a lot of where, like I said, Maria and I are kind of building this roadmap for our engagement in September in Vegas, is that, how to marry the two, right? So how do you get these different generations to strategically build a team, a person, an idea, all the way to execution inside of your own organization, or your own, even like I said, even if you're trying to build, a group of a following of for instance, Women in Security Council. How do we marry the wisdom with the technical knowledge? Not everybody has to do everything. Not everybody should do everything. If everybody on this planet was a CEO, it wouldn't work, right? But the idea is to understand the personality traits on this group, this group, this group, and this group, and how to marry those to get, your strategic vision out, and actually get a following of people that will follow you from a leadership perspective rather than just a managerial perspective.
Do you think millennials have a challenge with leadership? A smart CEO, a smart COO, those C-level guys are smart for a variety of reasons. A lot of it's knowledge, technical, but really the smartest part of the best leader is the people piece. The best leaders understand the people part. Do the millennials understand that part of it, or do they rely too much on technology? I seem to think texting your boyfriend like my daughter does instead of calling him on the phone is probably not a good people skill. I think you just ought to call and talk to people.
No, and it's true. You know, like the social aspect of growing and harnessing your people skills is was not really taught, right? Like it used to be. I think that in, you know, whether it was elementary school, college, or, you know, even out in your first job out of college, back, you know, I'd say 10, 20 years ago, it was really, hey, get to know your team, get to know their needs, get to know their personalities, understand how to work with them on a go forward basis. And you might have to put up with a lot to get there, to get where you want to go in life, right? And if that means getting a promotion, you're going to have to put up with things. I think that a lot of the generations now think that they don't have to put up with things. They can just switch jobs, and in a year or 2 years, they can probably get an even a pay increase if they do that, mind you. And, you know, that putting up with things and still getting a trophy at the end is, you know, absolutely going to happen for them. So, and they just need to figure out the right connections to get them that next job. I think that it's a lot shorter term thought process. And that's what I think that's where the industries and especially HR departments. I used to work in HR in corporate America. I get that. But the HR, especially, they're having this problem with how to harness an individual in a 1 to 2 year time frame rather than the employee that used to stay at every corporation for 10, 20, 30 years, right? Pensions don't exist anymore in our generation, and we don't expect them, to be quite honest. We're going to find other means to actually, you know, pay people, you know, whether that's pizza parties, you know, root beer float days, whatever it is, that's actually working. And that's because the expectations have been really, they've changed for each one of these generations, and they're going to continue to change. The idea is, like, again, Marie and I are building this roadmap to how do you use that change, harness it, and still turn that vision again into reality of what you're trying to accomplish. Because there are some misguided steps in, you know, well, do we just pay them in pizzas rather than money? No, that's not necessarily it at all. But what we do want to do is give them that wisdom, entice them, and incentivize them with that wisdom that we know they're lacking. And how do you do that, right? So
distinguish leadership from being followed. Not the same thing to me.
Right.
And I'm not sure if you can stay in a business for 2 years and switch to another business that you're going to wind up to be the CEO anywhere. I mean, part of that leadership is some sort of long-term commitment to show leadership throughout the organization over a period of time at different levels to get to the top.
Absolutely. And the idea is that you know, they say one good thing that I've read recently about what do you find in a leader that, you know, is a very rare trait. And one of them is emotional courage. And what does that mean? Right? Well, this is an example of this exact statement, is that emotional courage is saying, I'm going to ask questions rather than state statements, because I want to actually understand the perspectives. And that's a leadership quality. You know, another one is that a lot of these leaders that you call leaders today, that where people actually voluntarily follow. So there's following because I have to, because you're the CEO, right? And then there's the following because I actually want to, because I actually respect you, your leadership qualities, and what you're doing for our initiatives. And you know what they're doing? They're listening to young professionals. They're listening to, you know, people that wouldn't always get noticed. They're doing these things, and other people are witnessing this and giving them that respect factor to gain more followers, right? So it's not all necessarily technical. From an Instagram following, like everybody's so interested, or, you know, getting how many people to, you know, how many connections do you have on LinkedIn? That's all wonderful and great. How many of those connections on LinkedIn, though, I'll challenge you, did you write a personal note to when you connected with them and it says, hey, it's nice to meet you, you know, let me know if I can ever help you in any way in the future? Or, you know, how many of those connections do you actually know personally that you would feel like you could, you know, pick up the phone or write an email to? It's creating that personal connection that's really going to set us apart. And by us, I mean those that are striving to be leaders rather than just people who gain followers. You know, there's a lot of mute followers out there.
Do we have a new model where instead of being pushed into leadership, people are pulling you into leadership? In other words, if I get on Twitter and I get 100,000 followers and I'm viral because everybody loves everything I say and it makes sense to a certain group of people, does that somehow make me a leader? It might.
Well, it's interesting because I mean, Kim Kardashian, right? She's got millions of followers. I mean, she posts one thing, and then all of a sudden, she's got a bazillion likes. You would consider her a leader, or would you consider her a follower leader? You know, like I said, this is where it gets very technical, and there's a lot of mute followers, right? People are really just interested today, and it depends on the platform, whether it's Instagram, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's your own boardroom, whether it's your own team right in front of you on a day-to-day basis. The idea would be to figure out why they're following you. Are they following you because you're valuable? Are they following you because they respect you and the decisions you make? Are they following you because you have great marketing skills, right? Why are they following? Are they following you because you actually, and that goes back to, you know, your own branding perspective. What are you branding yourself as? And I don't think a lot of people know that. And I don't think a lot of people are putting effort into that, in the sense that they understand how valuable that is. And the following might be, you know, how do I get, you know, college students, or, you know, next gen millennials to actually, you know, witness what I'm saying, and agree with it, and then respect me for it because it was original, rather than copied from, you know, the other 55, you know, people that may have put this out today on Instagram or something, or LinkedIn, or whatever it is. The idea is to be original and unique, but I think people are lacking some of that vision, and it's going to come back. We just have to, like I said, we have to figure out how to marry the two, and marry the generations so they can functionally work together and be very productive.
Any danger in being perceived as trying to go over people's heads? In other words, let's say I'm a director level, you know, I'm out tweeting something, and my vice president boss, who can't even, you know, work his BlackBerry that he still thinks is high tech, he gets upset about that, and now you're not going to get promoted.
Yeah, and there's damage control, right, with those instances that you probably need to do. But the other thing is it takes the generations, and I'm generalizing this with generations, and I hate when I do that, or anybody does that, because I just don't think it's. I mean, there's 10% of the generation doesn't fit anyway, so. But there's a group of humans that are, you know, I'll say in the 50, 60 age range, who are doing a really good job of taking this millennials, next gens, and actually attributing to their skill sets and getting them to teach them, right? So, for instance, there's a very high, you know, executive that I know. She's a female. And what she does once a week is she's set up with somebody in her team who doesn't even cover social media, not even on the social media, anything. And she trades her an hour of wisdom for an hour of social media training. And that's just on her team. And she has nothing to do with social media, marketing, not even sales, really. She's in partnerships. And I think that's brilliant, because what that does is it says, look, I have something to give you. You have something to train me on. And both our time is valuable. You're just as equal as me, because look, I might fumble through this, but you know what? You're going to fumble through something else when it comes to either wisdom, conversation, how to ask for things, how to negotiate my salary increase, how to do those things. And it's an excellent return. What we have to do is encourage A, the younger generation, and B, the older generation, to actually harness those conversations and ask for those conversations and sync up and actually mutually trade that information, and the communications beside it. So I think that, you know, we're on the edge of it. If we can just teach more to actually, like I said, ask for that trade-off and ask for those trades, you're going to create a lot of leaders with emotional courage across the board, you know, of any company. It's just going to happen naturally.
Brittany Gottlieb, she's a speaker at ASISGSX.org this summer in Vegas. She's going to talk about multi-generational strategic leadership guidance, or how to get noticed. Fascinating subject. Ms. Brittany, I look forward to meeting you at GSX this summer. We'll do some more shows. Thanks for coming on ASIS TV with SecurityGuyRadio.com.
Thanks, Chuck.